Hey, Salem County, I'm Joe Pritchett, career counselor at your Salem Community College, with the next installment in our series of roundtable discussions with leaders and influencers in multiple employment fields here in Salem County. This is an opportunity for those doing career exploration, and particularly due to the COVID-19 pandemic and its fallout, to learn more about the various career pathways available to our county's residents. Today, we're going to spend a few minutes discussing options related to supply chain. I'd like to introduce our guests. Chad Everwine is a senior supply planning specialist with Wawa Food Markets. Tyrone Prayer is the global logistics and supply chain master teacher at Salem County Vocational and Technical School. And Ron Burkhart is the assistant dean of institutional research and planning at Salem Community College. Gentlemen, welcome. It's good to meet all of you and to have this time with you today. So let's begin by having each of you introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us your experience, your background in the field, and how you got to the position you're in today. Let's start with Tyrone on this question, and then we'll move around the circle.
Okay, thanks for having me on. As we said, my name is Tyrone Prayer. And pretty much experience-wise, I have just under 20 years of experience in the field, okay? I actually gotten into this field not knowing that I was in it, actually, when I was 19 years old. I went to trade school out of high school, and I was a diesel mechanic, and I used to work for National Freight. I worked on tractor trailers. I got to see also forklifts working on, and I got to see how a lot of the operations in the warehousing and everything went, and I liked it and went to college, and I've been doing this ever since. Went into management. I worked, like I said, 6 years with National Freight. I've also worked, 6 years as in distribution, where I was a shipping and receiving area manager. Started out with Value City department stores. From there, I went to a operations manager with Value City, and then I went to the front of the house as a store management, and so I got to see both ends of it, back of the house as well as front of the house. When I went to the front of the house, I was a store manager for Kenny Shoes, if anybody remembers them, and then Foot Locker. I was also a store manager with them. So I became a trainer as a store manager, which brought me into what I do now as a teacher, because I enjoy teaching this. I enjoy working with students, and here I am.
All right. That sounds great. It's a lot of experience you bring to the table. All right, let's move over to Ron Burkhart.
Hi, yes, Ron Burkhart. Prior to joining higher education, I spent about 14 years in retail for that with Saturn Retail Enterprises, which at the time was a wholly owned subsidiary of General Motors. One of my responsibilities there was ordering the new car inventory. So familiar with the supply chain from that point of view for our dealership. And prior to that, for 10 years through high school into college, I worked for Pathmark Stores Incorporated in the city of Philadelphia. So again, familiar with material handling, ordering, receiving, and then the retailing of products and understanding where they come from.
All right. And then Chad.
So I kind of got into this field on accident as well. I started a little over 20 years ago working for Wawa as a assistant general manager. I moved up to a general manager, and right around 2003, Wawa started to form a supply chain and partnered with the McLean Company for a lot of our grocery and food service distributions. At that time, I was able to leave the stores as a trainer, kind of training stores and drivers how to get along with each other. Once our facility was completely up and running, I moved over to our distribution center, and I was a data analyst and delivery analyst at our NJD in Salem County, New Jersey, right there in Kearney's Point. And then at some point, we picked up a new software package. We started using SAP, and SAP offered a store forecasting and replenishment tool. And I was picked up and moved over to that team. I only had a high school diploma at the time. I did have some college but not much from there. Wawa helped me to go back to school. I studied organizational dynamics. They thought that that was understanding how organizations work and move and communicate with each other was one of the critical skills for supply chain at the time. And here I am.
So let's throw it right back to you, Chad. I'd like to know, because it's a really, for a person like me who's actually have worked in supply chain some, I worked as a chrome plater in a manufacturing plant in Colorado Springs many, many years ago. And so I didn't know, like you said, Tyrone, I didn't know I was involved in that, but I was. What is your definition of supply chain, and what various stages might people be employed in when we talk about supply chain?
So I don't work in necessarily the warehousing or manufacturing sector of supply chain. I'm more in the software technology avenue. So for me, the supply chain is kind of all the activities that are required to take a product concept from its inception all the way till you get it to a customer's hands. The more dynamically and efficiently you can execute these tasks, the more profit you can make off of the product. So that's kind of how I see a supply chain.
Okay, that works. How about you, Tyrone?
Yes, my definition of supply chain is very vague. It's basically the movement of materials from raw materials, which is from a supplier, throughout the manufacturing process to being manufactured, to go out to the customers. They want to be able to do this in a very timely and cost-effective way in order to get your materials out. So supply chain is pretty much on being able to supply you and I what we like to have.
Okay. Ron, anything to add to those definitions?
Well, I think one thing that's important to realize and that we've seen is how much data and timeliness comes into the supply chain. And we've especially seen that throughout the COVID-19 crisis. You know, we decided we needed PPE, personal protective equipment, in March. Well, you can't get a factory spun up to create enough PPE fast enough to where you have to do it. And I think we've probably also seen it walking through the aisles of the supermarket.
Yes.
Up until recently, you still couldn't get hand sanitizer. Toilet paper was a rare commodity. There have been periods where the price of chicken and meat has doubled or tripled. And that's all because of shocks to the supply chain, where people have changed their behavior and suddenly bought a year's worth of toilet paper, or they're hoarding groceries or pasta. So yeah, the forecasting element is critically important in knowing what you need, when you need it, and what your lead time is from raw material to finished product to getting it into the customer's hands.
Yeah, that forecasting piece, in light of our pandemic, certainly I think would make for an interesting discussion on another day. But
It's been quite a challenge over the past couple of months.
I can only imagine. Yeah. So Ron, as you do research, especially, and the others will get around to you guys as well, but who in the supply chain now, short-term, mid-term, long-term, who do you anticipate to be doing hiring?
You know, of course, COVID's dented the reality of this entire situation. When you look at the hiring trends, there is a group where there has been tremendous growth, right? So retail food, anybody connected to essential business and certain kinds of manufacturing have continued unfettered or grown. If you are a supply chain organization supporting a non-essential business, you've seen the obvious happen. So if you're a retailer selling soft goods, non-food, non-home improvement, your facility has likely been shut. What I would expect to see happening is those reopening, and if anything, you go back to that forecasting bit, when you go to forecasting labor, what you're probably going to see is 4 or 5 months of backlog where those industries are going to be stressed. So, case in point, you also cannot buy a bicycle right now. Now that the sporting goods stores are open again, they're going to be extremely busy and probably over-hiring to compensate for demand. And then once demand normalizes, see that come back down again. Manufacturing, drug, there's a lot of COVID vaccine research going on. Well, eventually, once vaccines are available as a finished good, or once vaccine manufacturing takes off and the precursors have to come in, for example, at a company like Siegfried in Pennsville, you're going to have material flying across the country, creating these vaccines and then distributing those vaccines out to where they eventually need to go to people. So I would expect at this point, you're going to see a return to normalization for non-essential supply chain. You're going to see manufacturing continue, and then you're also going to see pharmaceutical manufacturing increase. I think the biggest question mark right now is what happens with restaurants. I have friends who work for the second and third largest food distribution group, and naturally when the warehouses were closed, when the retail establishments were closed, they had a problem. Well, now all of a sudden that restaurants were previously opening up, they were incredibly busy. And now we're finding here in New Jersey that the restaurants are closing again. So that'll be a question mark. And again, that goes back to forecasting. When your restaurant's been closed for 4 months, how many chicken fingers do you need? Well, you really don't know until you've been open for a couple of days, and you may have trouble getting those chicken fingers then.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Chad, I had a little background noise on your site, muted you just while Ron was talking, but in your work with Wawa and what you guys do, who do you see, perhaps, if you want to add anything to what Ron said, who do you see hiring in the near future? You're still muted. Sorry. I tried to unmute you and I couldn't. All right.
There we go. From my perspective, a huge part of supply chain is the ability to save money by working, scheduling, and planning efficiently. So that means kind of everyone is getting into the supply chain or already is into the supply chain where they're starting to look at their costs in a different way. And that creates opportunities. There's so much technology flooding the market right now with autonomous vehicles and robotics and millions of different software packages to help you do these things. It feels kind of like the industry is only in its infancy and growing in huge ways. And folks who have some ability to manage software, use software, all of that new tech that's coming out needs support people, right? We can't have robotics and we can't have autonomous vehicles without guys behind screens making sure the algorithms work right.
Okay. Tyrone?
Yeah. I would say basically the ad was like a lot of what was already said is the service industry. I would add to that. The service industry would be more like your hallback people, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning people that come into your home to repair your heating and air conditioning system. Your automotive people who repair your vehicles, your plumbers. Supply chain for them would be growing because yes, we did have the COVID-19 epidemic, but those people still have a situation where they have to keep us up and running. So I would say a lot of the service industries. Matter of fact, we have a big project on that for my seniors on supply chain just for the service industry, and they get to see that. And another thing I would say to add to would be the food industry, basically your foods and everything, your toilet paper, your hand sanitizers, all that. Because it was shut down for so long, and then I would say now they're starting to get up and replenishing a lot of that stuff. So I'm sure they're going to go and they need people to get everything back up and running. So there's quite a bit to do out there, and like I say, and this industry is growing by leaps and bounds like every day. So,
yeah. So interestingly, the three of you have kind of come from started in the field with different backgrounds. So Chad, you mentioned you had a high school diploma when you started. Tyrone, you talked about having gone to a technical school. And Ron, I think you started with a 4-year degree, correct?
I worked through high school and then through college and then to a bachelor's degree, but yeah.
Okay. So taking where you entered the industry, the field, today, what could a typical high school graduate with nothing else, what kind of job could that person get, Chad?
I mean, I think any type of operational experience helps you to start in a supply chain career. So whether it be retail operations, warehouse or distribution operations, production facilities, any operations will help you in your supply chain career. But there's also a lot of really, I don't want to call them simple, but easy to obtain certificates for supply chain that can help you to grow your career. You have Six Sigma for process improvements, whereas CPIM, certified in production and inventory. CPSM is certified professional in supply chain management. And a lot of these are fairly simple online courses you can take, and you can pick up these certificates, and they can help you along in your career in a lot of ways.
Okay, good. And then Tyrone, somebody that's coming out of a Salem County VOTEC or a Salem Community College, where might they be able to start in this process?
Yes. Well, and I'm also using my experience in distribution. A lot of them can come in there, like, for example, pick packers. A lot of the inventory, a lot of this that comes into the distribution centers, they come in a bulk box a lot of times. Sometimes they're pre-packed, okay? But a lot of them come in a bulk, and they'll come and they have to be able to sort this material out in order to send it out to the various stores. So that's one operation they can do there. They get certified to operate forklifts, okay? You know, pulling and all that. Unloading trailers is another one. There's, pick, auditing, that's the word I want to use, auditing, where a lot of times we bring things off our trucks, and then we have to do auditing on, they don't do every box, they go like every so many boxes to make sure the proper material and the proper amounts are in there. And you really don't have to have a college degree to do any of that. Okay, so there's some of the things that they can actually come out and do. If you want to talk about the front end, and on the front end, we can talk about customer service. Okay, they got dealing with the customers every day, ringing up customers, answering customer questions. All right, there's various things, and you don't have to have a college degree, as I mentioned, to do all that stuff.
Okay. And then Ron, you, like I said, you started in the system kind of in high school, but went back specifically for that bachelor's degree. What advantage would a person with a bachelor's degree have in getting a job in this field or starting a career in this field?
I think there's two ways to look at it. If you come to supply chain with a bachelor's degree, you're going to be in a higher level of responsibility, higher level of skills position, probably at the either store management level or some sort of supervisory function in a warehouse or at the corporate level. I think what's useful for our audience of high school and college grads is looking at coming in more at the bottom and what do you make out of it. And I think Chad, coming from a retail background, specifically with the stores, you can probably enumerate what this looks like, right? You come in part-time, you're just a clerk. You get a year under your belt, you're a shift supervisor. Then you make full-time. Well, then hopefully you've selected an employer that's going to pay for college for you. And then you can go to the assistant store manager level. Well, then once you get to that level, you've got a lot of options, right? Because you don't have to work for that same company that paid for your education. And by the way, retail is retail. So you can move from one point to another. You can also move further up to the area divisional manager or corporate level. And I think the greatest example for anybody specifically in retail and to a lesser extent in supply chain is how much those soft skills you pick up in a store environment or a warehouse environment are relatable to any other employment anywhere. I can proudly say I probably learned more in my 10 years of working in the supermarket and 4 years working in a car dealership from watching people watching peers, and watching managers than I probably learned in the classroom. So to somebody who takes advantage of those opportunities and finds a way to climb the ladder, either vertically or horizontally, there's many opportunities.
Well, we're going to talk about salary expectation, but I think you've kind of already touched on, you can go everywhere from that entry level minimum wage, slightly above minimum wage job up to, you know, general manager, those kinds of things that may, you know, or higher, that may get you into six-figure incomes. Let's say someone came in, kind of did the normal progression up the ladder, and about 10 years in, just an estimate, what do you guys think they would be able to make?
So if they came in at 15, which I think is largely where most of this work is coming in, the 13 to 15 level, you're probably starting off at 30. And I would expect 10 years in, you'd probably be in the 50 to 60 range. That would be on you getting increasing responsibility and probably increasing skills, certification, or education.
Yeah, I mean, if you stay at the cashier's station at McDonald's for the next 10 years, you're not going to jump that much. But if you are doing the things that are necessary to move up, then you can make good progress in that 10-year window.
I can speak for me personally. It took me about 2.5 years to get to a management level position at Wawa. Then I was a store manager for about another 3 years. And from there, the opportunities kind of became endless.
Okay. So one last thing, just, is there anything that I've missed that you'd like us to know before we sign off today?
Yeah, I just like, just that a lot of people to keep in mind is, it's like, there's a lot of things that goes on in supply chain that is not seen by everybody every day. Like, such as, there's like well-paying positions, such as master production schedulers, who does, manufacturing requirements planning. They do capacity requirements planning. They're high-paying positions that people can get into, and usually they come in with a college degree. They come in with a bachelor's degree. There's other things where they can work up to operations manager. Operations manager runs a lot of the show in the department. We in Value City, we call them the facilities manager, who was, other places call them vice president. We call them a facilities manager, who runs our entire distribution center. Okay, so they're this type of positions where, you know, you can go gain knowledge, get your education, and you can always move up. There's a lot of places, and I heard someone mention earlier about corporate positions, moving up into the corporate area. So, so there's a lot of growing in this field that they can do.
I agree very strongly. Like I mentioned earlier, to me, supply chain is still a developing field, and it already touches almost every aspect of commerce. It shows no signs of slowing down. It's the type of field that anyone can enter and ultimately make a pretty good living, as long as you're willing to put in the effort. It does require effort. It requires education, constant change. The soft skills that we talked a little bit about, critical thinking, problem solving, these things are critical. But if you have these skills and then you have any kind of good experience in sales, process efficiency, show constant improvement, and you can move up into a lot of those corporate positions, to Mr. Pryor's point, purchasing, forecasting like I do, even just basic software configuration specialists. Again, I find the potential to be limitless.
One thing I'd point out, Joe, was to urge viewers to go to the college's website and search for career coach, and to search for careers by supply chain. And you'll see a description of the jobs, who's hiring, what the education expectations are, what the salary bands look like, and use that to make your decision, both in terms of who to work for, but also in terms of what you're going to need to prepare to put yourself in the best footing to be successful as both a candidate and an employee.
I appreciate you putting in a plug for my job, Ron. So a couple things that have come up in other fields, just a real quick thumbs up, thumb sideways, thumbs down. when you think about the various occupations that happen in these fields, getting yourself ready, being able to be hired, how important is being able to pass a drug test? Okay. How about driver's license? Okay. High school diploma. Is that, yeah. Yeah, I kind of left you with a Minnesota uplift there. College degree. Okay. And then one thing, I appreciate, Chad, you brought some of this into your conversation, but one of the things I see, and it's my bias, is where my degree is, but communication skills.
Oh, yes.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up our time for today. For those of you who heard Ron's suggestion that you look for a career coach, feel free to contact me. I can walk you through that process and help you do some exploration there as well. But I want to thank each of you, Chad, Tyrone, Ron, for joining me today, and look forward to working with you again sometime in the future.